Next up is Rick Dalrymple, and he is a best-selling author, as you heard earlier, and he is going to give a talk which I think is going to really resonate with everybody in this room. So, Rick, take it away.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be here with y'all this morning, and I want you to feel good about what you're going to hear today, because what you're going to hear has helped some companies save hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost profits and revenue. And to some of you, it could mean millions of dollars in lost profits and revenue. Now, today's topic, 5 costly mistakes leaders make that kill profitability. Well, that is the message and purpose of my presentation today. And I believe in teaching people how to insulate their companies from risk and losses that cause their money to go up in flames. And I want to share some tips, tools, and insights with you that you can take back to the office and use here in the weeks and months to come. Now, I want to keep this morning interactive. I'll be asking you some questions along the way. I would simply like you to play along. Obviously, the more you put into something, the more you get out of it. But in presentations that I would go to, I would say if I can get just one thing from a presenter, I will consider it a good use of my time. But truthfully, I hope you're going to get a lot of information that you can take back with it today. And I'd like to go ahead and just jump right into it because we've got 3 hours worth of stuff to do in 40 minutes. And if technology is going to work here, keep our fingers crossed. We'll call this, I'm going to show you a quick training video. Everyone take copious notes, and we'll have a quick discussion afterwards. Okay, any questions? Hope none of y'all had a day like that. Well, let's get right into the heart and meat of our program and say that in a study that was done by Heart Research Institute, they do one of these every year, and they interview over 1,200 employees, employers, medium and small companies, to find out what their risk concerns are. And they aggregate the information into 7 major risk concerns. The top one is talking about workers' comp liability. Medical cost inflation, very expensive. We're going to talk mostly about workers' comp administration today. Then there was cyber liability. Who here hasn't had the touch from a computer virus or had your account hacked in some way? It's even happening to the big boys. The Sonys of the world, the Targets of the world, the DNC. And then again, we've got medical cost inflation. It's through the roof. Heaven knows the large reach and impact that the Obama administration has had on health care, and heaven knows where the shells are going to land right now. But today we're going to keep and talk about something that I feel is an American classic in business today. We're going to talk about workers' comp administration and productivity. But we're also going to pepper into this conversation the synergy that exists between workers' comp and health care, because there is a synergy between both. We've all seen and heard the tongue-in-cheek commercial, happy cows make happy cheese. Well, I'm here to say that happy and healthy employees are obviously more productive employees and less apt to have claims and lawsuits. But a little bit about me. I'm known as America's Risk Reduction Authority. As a professional, I have been in the insurance industry for over 36 years as a claims adjuster, in loss control, and currently as a broker. And all that has given me an excellent technical foundation for the consulting work that I do today. And about 6 years ago, I used to teach a class to CEOs and CFOs called called Keys for Profitability in the New Economy. And in that, I was teaching cost containment strategies to CEOs and CFOs, those strategies. And because of the success that people were having over time, I had a number of those people come up to me over time and say, hey, Rick, you ought to write a book on that stuff. So I did. A couple years ago, it was published, Accidents Waiting to Happen. It's a book on best practices in workers' comp administration and protecting corporate profitability. And proud to say it became a bestseller in the first 2 weeks of distribution. Even more proud to say it went to #1 in September of last year. Now, I say that not to impress you, but to impress upon you that I have an absolute passion for how I see my work. A passion that comes from not only my work, but comes from the greatest role model in my life, and that was my dad. My dad was a family practice doctor. Patients loved him because he had great bedside manner. He was all about doing the right thing and getting good results. And he would tell me as I was growing up, Rick, no matter what you do in life, work to be good at what you do and focus in on getting good results. And I'm pleased to say with the results that we get from our clients, they're predictable in helping them reduce risk. Today, you're in the right place if you're a company that obviously would like to have good coverages and programs, but you also want to improve your profitability, which can be done through risk management and risk mitigation. Because obviously, who doesn't want to be competitive in your marketplace? Everyone does. You're in the right place if you've ever been frustrated with claims or lawsuits that you knew were killing your company's profitability. Maybe you felt powerless to try to control them. And maybe some of you have done your level best to try to control claims, but maybe you've only had marginal success. Now, you're also in the right place if if you currently are concerned about health care and compliance. Again, heaven knows where the government's going to land on this process, but the shells are continuing to move. But we'll hopefully know soon enough. And some of you are just so ready to know that there are predictable systems out there that can help you literally reduce your insurance costs as well as your total cost of risk and increase your profitability. Now today, what you're going to learn is the financial impact that losses have on your company, not only to your bottom line, but to your top line as well. We're going to talk about the 5 mistakes people make regarding claims and lawsuits. And lastly, we're going to show you how you can gain peace of mind by knowing what your operational blind spots are, the ones that do cost you money. So let's get started by talking about the many impacts that losses have on your company. The first one is the emotional cost. Let's face it, who wants to deal with a lawsuit from an attorney? Or for that matter, who really wants to deal with insurance companies? Then you've got the loss of work. Had a client who was staring down the barrel of losing $17 million worth of work because his experience modification factor was going to end up being over 1.0. I'm assuming most of you here know what an experience modification is, right? We were able to step in and help them reduce some of the reserves on the claims that they had, and it kept his mod to be at a 0.99. So he was able to keep that $17 million worth of work. Productivity losses, what needs to be said there other than the fact that if your employees aren't working, you're losing money, right? And then you've got fraudulent claims. Let me see a show of hands here. Who here has had a workers' comp claim that just really frustrated you? Yeah, happens a lot. A lot. And then we've got mismanaged claims. My next door neighbor who I go skiing with, an adjuster made a screw up on a claim that's going to now cost, he's with a captive, it's cost him $380,000. Something got missed. We will invariably see carrier adjusters have caseloads way more than they can actually handle. And if a carrier, like in that case, messes something up and it causes your premiums to increase and your mod increase, do you think the carriers are really going to care? I think you can answer that question on your own. And some of you may wonder, why are our rates increasing? Here's an exact one of many reasons why your rates increased. The Castellano case that got adjudicated in April of last year. The long and short of it was the legal profession found a creative way to get themselves back into the system and charge exorbitant fees. And I'm going to share with you how a $25 item turned into over $10,000 worth of expense. There's a lot of writing on that page, and I'm just going to give you the Reader's Digest version of what we're talking about here. Had an employee that was injured, going to be out 3 weeks. They obviously need to be paid lost wages in this process. And the employer sent in the 13 average weekly wage statement to the carrier to get processed. In this process, the employee decided to go get an attorney. And in that processing of the documentation, the employer forgot that they had given that employee a $25 bonus. So what did the attorney do? He files suit and racked up 22 hours worth of time at $300 an hour plus expenses. That's how that claim turned into over $10,000. Yes. In the past, no attorney would ever, they would typically get percentages of what they ever got for the employee. No attorney is going to spend time and hours trying to get 40% on a $25 item. But now the floodgates are open, and now they can go ahead and rack up large amounts of fees in a situation like that. So when you wonder why rates are going up, that's how and why it's going up. So let's talk about the visions that you have for your company. There's a company in a manufacturing operation, very successful, been around for 20 years, opening up a third shift because they brought on a new client. And he's budgeting about $750,000 for that process. Contractor who's got a very ambitious goal of opening up 5 new locations in the state of Florida. He's got a budget of about $1.8 million to fund his goals. And bottom line, we all know that whatever goals that you all have in mind for your companies, they all cost money. And the last thing you want to do is have your goals go away or be elongated out into the future or not happen. Let me have you crystallize this in your mind. If I were to come into your offices this Friday and offer you $500,000, what would you do with the money? Have you got something in mind? Well, that's really, I mean, honestly, that's what if you've got something in mind, jot it down. Underline it twice, because that's really what we're talking about. That's what's at stake. So let me share with you the story about Dave and Sandy. Dave runs a successful operation in South Florida in Fort Myers. He comes in from a successful weekend at the beach about 9 o'clock in the morning, and he's got to walk past the corridor to get to his office. And he's got to walk by Sandy's office. Well, Sandy's got that look. Ever had one of your employees give you that look of frustration, that look of despair? Well, Dave makes eye contact with Sandy as he's walking down the corridor, and he can see something's up, and he's thinking, oh my gosh, what's this going to be about? So he approaches her desk, and good morning, what's up? Well, Sandy proceeds to say, Dave, I've got some bad news, and I've got some worse news. What would you like first? Well, you got to know Dave. Dave's a bottom line kind of guy, kind of rolls his eyes and says, just tell me what happened. Well, Sandy says, remember the guy that we hired mid last week, George? You knew he had a claim, right? Well, I just found out this morning he's filing a claim. He's got an attorney. Well, as soon as Dave heard that, his stomach went into a knot, because this isn't the first time this has happened to Dave. And he's thinking to himself, that's just great. Here we go again. Someone taking advantage of us, taking advantage of the system. And really, in a situation like that, who wins? It's rarely the employee. The companies are doing the right thing. It's never Dave. It's typically the attorneys. So let me give you a little bit more chemistry about this situation, about this claim. Dave had hired on 20 new people in 1 month to build out a job he'd just been awarded the month before. And in the first 2 weeks of hire of these 20 employees, one of his employees goes out and has a serious workers' comp claim. But what Dave learned after the fact was that this employee has had a history of going out and having claims and getting an attorney. Now, this claim ran about $67,000, and based on Dave's profit margin, he's now got to sell over $1.3 million just to break even, just to pay for that claim. I'm going to share with you how we come up with that number here in just a moment. So let's talk about the 5 costly mistakes leaders make that kill profitability. The first one's not knowing your numbers, your KPIs, your key performance indicators. And they're different for each and every one of you, but do you know what your OSHA DART rates are, your incident rates, Do you know your loss ratios, your experience modification factors? Do you know what your incurred losses are? And as a refresher for many of you, an incurred loss is something that you would get off your carrier loss runs, and it basically incorporates what the carrier has already paid for a claim, plus what they think they're going to pay for a claim, called a reserve. And that combined total is called an incurred loss. Do you know what yours are? Now, many of you, I'm sure, have all heard of the great management mind, Tom Peters. But Tom apparently had coined the phrase, what gets measured gets done. I'm going to advance on that and say that you can't manage what you can't control. And you can't control what you can't measure. So many times it's not enough just to know your numbers. Do you know the analytics behind your numbers? Do you know the time of day or day of week that your losses are occurring? The type of body parts that are being injured? The types of claims that you're having? I mean, the bottom line here, if you're going to invest money into a safety program, why not invest it in areas where you're having issues? And I would say probably 9 out of 10 leaders really never really know what their numbers are. If you don't know what your loss ratios are, I would suggest when you get back to the office, either yourself or have one of your senior staff or one of your staff members, get a copy of your loss runs. But more importantly, look for the analytics. Look for the trends that you may be having within your companies. Let's talk about the second caution mistake leaders make that kill profitability, not knowing the real cost of claims. And when we talk about the real cost of claims, we're talking about not only the direct cost of those claims, but the indirect cost of those claims as well. And that picture of an iceberg is a great depiction of what we're talking about here, because the direct cost of those claims, the tip of the iceberg, pales in comparison to the indirect cost of the impact that those losses have on your company. It's huge. So let me explain this further. Who here has heard of the terminology total cost of risk? See a show of hands? Total cost of risk, anybody? It's been around for a while. It's been around since 1974. It was created by a guy by the name of Frank E. Bird Jr. And Frank had a publication called The Real Cost of Accidents Can Be Measured and Controlled. And I'd like everyone just to stop, and I want you to think about how much you pay in premiums right now and put that number in your head. Talking everything, your property, liability, workers' comp, auto, everything. You got a number in mind? Well, what the science of T-Core says, if you're spending $100,000 on your premiums, what the science of T-Core says is that your total cost of risk is conservatively over $1 million. Which means your bigger cost to your company isn't what you pay in premiums. It's what's below the waterline. How much did your last bad hire cost you? Who here has had an employee working with you for 4, 5, 6 months and left your company? It's happened to me. Happened to y'all? Youre, Society of HR Managers, put a publication out a couple years ago saying if you've got someone making $30,000, $35,000 a year and they leave your company after half a year, that employee costs you upwards of $70,000, $75,000. The cost to retrain, the cost to rehire, HR's involvement, lack of production. That's really what we're talking about. It's extremely expensive to your company. So what's the moral of the story here? When you think about your insurance and a risk management program, think beyond the quoting process. Think beyond your coverages. Look for resources that can help you not only reduce your premiums, but look for resources that can help you shrink down what those indirect costs could be, whether it's training, just keeping track of claims, whatever it needs to be. But there's a lot of soft costs that go into that. And as it relates to T-Core, let me share something with you that comes out of OSHA called indirect loss cost factors. And what OSHA says is that for any claim that you have, there are some very real additional costs associated with them. In their stats, they came up with factors that range anywhere from 1.1 to 4.5. So everyone, if you would, take out your phones and put yourself in calculator mode, if you would. I'm going to take you through a brief exercise in math, simple math to kind of bring this home. I'm going to take you back to our very first example we just talked about with Dave. Everyone got your calculators ready? we talked about the direct claim that Dave had, and his claim was $67,488. $67,488. And I want you to multiply that times 1.1, which is the lowest factor from the preceding page. And what does everyone come up with as a indirect loss costs? 74,000? Okay. Now I want you to take that, we're going to take that number and we're going to put it down where we add, go ahead and add the numbers, now start new. 74,236, which was the number we just got from the indirect loss cost, and then add to that the 67,488. 67,488. And what do we come up with? $141,000 total loss costs. Big money. Again, this is an example of a workers' comp claim. I told you I was going to share with you the synergy that exists between workers' comp and healthcare. Let me share with you a study that came out of Duke University from the Medical Center analysis on overweight folks. The stats were shocking. They came up and they had about 12,000 people involved in this study. And they learned that those who were overweight filed 2 times the number of workers' comp claims than their non-overweight counterparts. What was really shocking is that the cost to repair them, 7 times the cost, medical bills. And why is that? There's a terminology called comorbidity. If you've got someone who's overweight, they more than likely, if they have diabetes, if you have diabetes, it's a statistical fact that it just takes us longer to heal up. And that also, people like us getting old, it just takes longer to heal. Doctors may have to put off a surgery for a couple months until the patient gets better before they can go on with the workers' comp treatment. And lastly, those who are overweight were off 13 times off of work more than their non-obese counterparts. So what's the moral of the story here? We've got to get our people healthy. We've got to find out what are their issues. We're going to talk about that. Now, I told you I would share with you a tool. You've obviously got it in your books. You don't need to write it down. But this is a site, comes from the Department of Labor. And on this site, it gives you great explanations on indirect loss costs. But it also gives you a good calculation tool. And again, I'd recommend when you get back to the office, order your loss runs and have your key people take your losses through the calculation tool to really understand the financial impact that your losses are having on your company. I think you'll find it'll be a very eye-opening exercise. So let me share with you the story about Mario. Mario's a company up in North Florida. In 1 year had 8 claims totaling over $87,000. He paid his $12,000 in deductible. Carrier paid the balance. And in Mario's case, he figured out he had over $93,000 in additional soft costs. And what was interesting in Mario's case, he took about 2.5, 3 months to figure this out. He really wanted to understand the impact that his losses had on his company. He took the time to do this. This is his math, not ours. And as you go down through those list of items there, they should all make sense to you. Very common sense stuff. Productivity, repair, replacement, cleanup costs. What was interesting is he got off easy. See the legal cost there, just over $10,000? We generally see $15,000 and $20,000 for legal fees. 2 of the 4 people that were involved in the claim, 1 he had to fire, 1 he let go. So $6,800 in training is now money up in flames, having to start all over again. So Mario ended up with one of those V8 moments, saying, you know what, if I had gone through in the training, and if I had done some training, I probably would have avoided what had happened. And he said, I would have saved myself a ton of money in the process. So let's shift gears now, and let's talk about the impact that your claims have on your sales. Well, the first thing you've got to know as a company is what's your net profit margin. In Mario's case, it was 7%, so help me out, those who have the calculator still out. Taking 7% and you divide that in your total loss costs, what do we come up with? Who's got their calculator out? It's a big number. Amount of sales needed just to break even and pay for that claim, big money. So let me put this in your world. $180,000 in lost profits. How many widgets do you have to manufacture? How many masonry blocks do we have to produce and sell? Contracts. At what percentages in order to make $180,000 in lost profits? It's a lot of effort, isn't it? Let's talk about the third costly mistake leaders make that kill profitability. Not knowing your blind spots. There you are in your red car going down the road of business. And that yellow car represents a lawsuit that you didn't see coming, was not in your field of vision. That blue car represents a workers' comp claim that you know we have on the books, and it's starting to really get expensive. It's starting to kind of grow hair on it, if you will. That's what we call it. Now, many of you have heard of the 80-20 rule. Have you heard of the 90-10 rule? Pretty much says that 10% of your employees are going to cause you 90% of your increases in healthcare and workers' comp costs. It's just statistically what we see. So what, again, the moral of the story here is on the healthcare side, do health risk assessments. Find out what issues your best assets may have. On the workers' comp side, have an audit of what policies and procedures that you have in place. Because from our perspective, not doing so, they're blind spots. And if I can just remember just two things from today, I'd like you to remember this. If you reduce your business risk as a company, you can and will increase your profitability as a company. But number two, know your blind spots. Know your blind spots. Number one, New York's best-selling authors Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan have a book called Execution. And in their book, they make the observation that too many business leaders today fool themselves into thinking that their businesses are well run. How many times have we heard the idea, sometimes we don't know what we don't know? Well, blind spots to me, they cause claims. And to me, claims are like being mugged in an alley. And I believe in teaching people how not to get mugged. I believe in teaching people how not to use their insurance. How's that for a unique idea? So let me tell you the story about Tom, a successful distributor. Been in Central Florida for 20 years, hadn't had a claim in 10. Not that long ago, boom, he ends up with a claim that was not only unexpected, but it was avoidable. So let's get into some blind spots. Ask us some questions here. Let me see a show of hands. Who here is using medical health questionnaires and conditional offers of employment in your hiring process? Anybody? I know Yasmin. It is important, my friends. It's important, and here's why. Let me further the story with Andrew, a 32-year-old man, had back surgery 3 months before he was hired. So what do you think happened in the first 3 weeks of his hire? Reinjures his back. His claim ran about $76,000. Based on his profit margin, Tom now has to sell about $2 million worth of work just to pay for that in extra sales. So let me ask you this. Have you ever hired someone today and put them on the job tomorrow without really vetting them out well? It's huge. Let me take you back to what I just asked you. That conditional offer of employment letter I just mentioned to you, that becomes your trigger point document that gives you the ability to give someone that medical health questionnaire. Why is that important? Because it basically gives you a get out of jail free card. If someone is less than honest in completing that medical health questionnaire, it is a get out of jail free card. And why is that? Through a court case called Martin Company versus Carpenter. If someone is less than honest in completing that, you've just now given yourself the ability for your carrier to legally, legitimately deny that workers' comp claim. Again, saving your company a lot of money in the process. Talk about some other blind spots. Pre-employment background checks. This is an important one that Dave should have had in mind. We are blessed in the state of Florida in the hiring process. If you have someone's social security number, you can actually look up and see if this person's a professional workers' comp claimant. Dave actually had this information but just didn't do it. Life got in the way, put it on the back burner. And had he gone through the state and checked this person out, he would have seen that George had a rap sheet about a page and a half long. If any of you are interested in where you get that information, you can just give me your card afterwards. I'll be glad to share it with you. Motor vehicle reports, MVRs, should be doing them. Why? Again, a legal terminology here, negligent entrustment. If you hire somebody, put them in your company vehicle, end up in a death claim or a serious accident, and they know it's you, the company, the legal community will do an absolute tap dance on your head. They will eat your lunch. I'll take that back. They'll eat you for lunch. They're very cheap to do, so just make sure that you're doing your background checks via MVRs. Last but not least, character assessments. And when I talk about character assessments, sometimes people are thinking about personality profiling. And that is a good thing to do. I have clients that do them. But I'm talking about something that's become a lot more relevant, much more used. The ROI is huge. It's called integrity testing. It's good because it ferrets out those people who suffer from a condition called cognitive dissonance. What in the world is that? That's when someone's behaviors are not in alignment with their value structure, whatever's deep in their subconscious mind. And it looks for their propensity for drug use, for theft, even has a hostility quotient in it. It can even test to see if they're trying to beat the test. Again, Sherm put this out a while back. It's become extremely popular with middle market companies, and large companies do it all the time. But again, if you can just get one person, in Dave's case, to ferret out people who may have issues, we've seen statistically it's reduced the number and cost of claims very predictably. So let's talk about the fourth costly mistake leaders make, not having systems, and quite frankly, not involving your team. And this picture here is a good depiction of what we're talking about here. When you assemble your company on the front line every day, before the play starts, everyone needs to know where to go when the play starts. And safety and risk management is not something just to be relished off to your safety people or HR. It involves y'all as CEOs, CFOs, HR directors. Who is on your team is going to be different for each and every one of you. Some of you may have a more robust C-suite than others. But your plant managers, your administrators, supervisors, all of these folks need to be involved in the risk management process every day. So let's talk about Risk Score, which is a system used to help uncover blind spots. And when you think of Risk Score, think of it like a credit score, but for your business. If you've got a good high credit score, what does it do to your mortgage rates? Lowers them, right? Same thing holds true in the insurance world. If you've got a good high risk score, you can find yourself getting better terms, better coverages. And I was doing the research for my book. It became very evident there's a lot of silos in the insurance industry of people who have their hands in your pocket and you have very little control and they don't talk to each other. Think about it. The underwriters who underwrite your account. You've got the claims people, the loss control people. Then you've got the dynamic of the medical community, the legal community. All these people are involved in workers' comp, but they rarely talk to each other. So when I was doing the research for my book, I basically took the lids off the silos. We dumped everyone together. We had 31 different insurance companies, labor law attorneys and workers' comp attorneys involved to come up with what we thought and they thought were best practices in work comp administration. And we started off with probably about 150 issues. And after several iterations, we boiled it down to what we call 64 questions, points of light. And it's not, again, just based on safety. It's based on a holistic array of things that deal with how you hire. What are you doing after you've offered someone a job? To what are you doing before and after you have a claim? Let me ask you this. Let me bring this closer to home. Who here has raised 16-year-olds in your household? I've had 3. God bless us, right? Well, remember when your son or daughter turns 16, or when your son or daughter turns 16, if you've got proof that they got a B+ average, gone through driver training, you got discounts and credits off the automobile insurance, right? Well, again, the same can hold true in the insurance world. And just want to share with you a quick case study of a company that saved over 49 grand because they had things in place. I'm just going to take a second here and just read 2 sentences from an email from a carrier underwriter. So, based on the insured's prior claims experience, we feel the original quote premium of $354,682 would be warranted. But upon request for reconsideration and reviewing the proactive work your client has enacted, we have revised the renewal premium down to $304,967. You know, the math gets crazy in your head, but that differential was $49,000. That's huge. Simply because they had good policies and procedures in place. So let's talk about the 5th costly mistake leaders make, not taking action. And this may be the easiest and the hardest one of the bunch to do because it may be easier just to stay with status quo and not do anything. But how many of us have waited to put the alarm system in until after we've been robbed? Or put the safety program in until after we've had OSHA knock on the door and give us a fine? But in summary, as I said, if you reduce your business risk as a company, you can and will increase your profitability as a company. But know your blind spots. More importantly, do something about them. And those who have systems in place, we have seen these type of stats. We've seen reductions well over 63%, but we've also seen an average, and the cost of those claims go down 21%. We know how hard it is construction staffing and just staffing in general is. We've seen improvements in employee turnover in the process. Some of you may know Paul Wolmerans had gone through a process, and from his perspective, it helped him connect the dots. He has a great safety culture, but ended up feeling that he ended up becoming even a more better safety culture by going through a system to review his blind spots. Manufacturer in Florida was averaging over $318,000 in losses over a 3-year period of time. And in 1 year dropped their claims below $28,000 based on their profit margin. It had the same impact as adding over $13 million to their sales. Their profitability up 24%. Huge numbers. Things to think about. I know we're running short on time. I want to kind of get us out, not going over. If anyone has, we talk about next steps. Again, as a company, we just make the appeal to people, know what your blind spots are. Find out what they are. It's up to you whether you want to do something with it. But again, thanks for your attention. I hope we've covered a lot of information in a very short period of time. Again, if anyone has any questions, be glad to field them now, but I'll turn this over to Jeff. Anyone have any questions?